You've covered some big royal stories in your time as the former BBC royal editor, of course. But this one is a very, very major royal story. I think the entire nation, indeed the world last night, was pretty shocked by this sudden announcement that the King was suffering from cancer, and quite clearly, by the very nature of that announcement, Harry getting on a plane immediately, we can conclude this condition is fairly serious.
Well, as Sarah was saying, I think any cancer diagnosis is potentially serious and certainly rather scary. I'm not sure that Harry has jumped as soon as he heard the news. It may well be that he did hear several days ago and thought, well, OK, Pa, I'll come after the weekend, which is what he's done. I'm very pleased he has touched down in London now. And as you were saying,
Agreed.
We can but hope for a reconciliation. I think for King Charles, he will naturally be apprehensive about the future, but he is making it so abundantly clear that he's wholly positive about it. And I think perhaps we should take his lead, both from him and from the palace. The positive vibes are coming out, that they believe that a full recovery will be possible, and they know more about it than we do, because we don't at this stage know what kind of cancer he's dealing with.
Jennie, as a distinguished former royal correspondent, Kevin was saying earlier that despite we're hearing from the palace that the prognosis is good, the cancer is caught in its early stage, to create headlines that reverberate around the world tends to suggest actually that this is an extremely grave situation and something that would be incredibly difficult for the King to keep concealed.
Yes, I don't think he could possibly have kept it concealed. We would all have started speculating about why he wasn't coming back to work after the successful treatment for his benign prostate problem. And so I don't think he had much choice. And he's been pretty open pretty swiftly about it. But I think it's been carefully choreographed. First of all, we heard that William was coming back to work, and that was before we knew about the cancer. Previous to that, we saw not only Charles and Camilla leave hospital looking quite chirpy, as you see there, but also at Sandringham just a couple of days ago, he quite deliberately made the walk from Sandringham House to the church. We all thought, oh gosh, he's hale and hearty, what a man, he's come through this just a week on from being in hospital. But all the time, he was aware of this diagnosis, and Camilla too, carrying out all sorts of engagements last week, including one at a cancer support place. And what must have been going through her mind when she knew that her beloved husband was facing the same fight?
Indeed. Now, talk us through, if you will, Jennie, the King's devotion to duty. Now, it's brilliant that they've caught his cancer early, hence the optimism surrounding him. And, of course, we all pray for a full recovery by His Majesty. But what will be... so reasons for optimism, reasons to be cheerful, as it were. But what will be a bitter blow to the King, and you'll know this, having known him for a long time, will be the fact that he can't fully carry out his duties as the sovereign of this nation. I mean, he's a notorious, if I can put it that way, workaholic, and not being able to do his full job will be a bitter blow to him, won't it?
It will, it will. Oh, gosh, in all the crises over the years, the Diana years and the trauma, sometimes he said it seemed like he was living in a Greek tragedy or a Shakespearean tragedy. And it is so ironic that he's waited so long for this job and he has so many plans, and now he's found that his wings have been cruelly clipped for the time being. So I think he will be, as I say, apprehensive about the diagnosis, but particularly I think he's going to be royally peed off that he can't get on with a job. You know, I think he was... Do you remember at the Accession Council when there was an inkwell that was in his way and he just wanted to sweep it off the table? I think that's what he wants to do now, just sweep it away, get on with the job. But, you know, cancer doesn't discriminate, and he is diagnosed with this disease, and he's going to have to deal with it, just like the 1,000 people yesterday and today and tomorrow who will be diagnosed with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredibly humanising in many respects, because we're constantly having it rammed down our throats when you read newspapers. If you eat red meat, you'll get cancer. If you smoke, you'll get cancer. If you eat junk food, if you're too sedentary, on and on and on. And this is a man who you would imagine has not done any of those things and has actually had access to a very sort of protected lifestyle. And yet he has shown that this really can happen to anybody. Well,
it's a very proactive decision on the King's part to live a healthy life. You know, he drinks, but he drinks in great moderation, a whiskey, a martini, loves his martini. He doesn't have lunch very often. He'd much prefer not to eat lunch. He said, if you have a good breakfast, then you don't need lunch. He's quite rigorous on certain days of the week, not eating meat, not eating dairy. He takes exercise every morning, the Canadian Air Force exercises that his father used to do. You know that he loves nothing better than to be out in Scotland, walking across the moors. He'd always be out in the fresh air. So you couldn't really be much healthier in your regime than Charles. But as we all know, that doesn't mean that you're safe from diseases, particularly cancer.
I can't help reflecting also, Jenny, just before you go, what a tough time the royals have been having lately. You know, a sort of perfect storm of problems. Suddenly Kate Middleton, or the Princess of Wales, we learn, is having serious abdominal surgery and will be out of action until Easter. Then, of course, we learned about the King's enlarged prostate and now his subsequent problems. Don't forget also, we learned along the way that Fergie, the Duchess of York, is suffering from melanoma. So it is a bit of those kind of, one of those sort of circumstances where it never rains but it pours. They are going through one of those bad phases that families do suffer sometimes, aren't they?
Yes, and I've reported on so many of these cycles that seem to afflict the royal family. You know, I've been reporting on them for 35 years now, and it is a beat, the royal beat, in which there is always drama. There are just periods of calm, and then something else comes along. But I think of all the predictions about how King Charles's reign would pan out, and hopes that it will be a very smooth transition, which it has been. I don't think anyone would have predicted this double whammy of health crisis, combined with Catherine undergoing major abdominal surgery, and, as you say, Sarah Ferguson having 2 cancer diagnoses. No one would have predicted that. But then, as I say, having done this job for so long, nothing ever surprises me about what is around the corner.